FRBs that are being picked up right now could potentially be some kind of alien signal. Is that correct?
Yeah, but first we need to probably explain what FRBs are. FRBs are fast radio bursts. It's an abbreviation. And these are flashes of radio waves that last thousands of a second. And at least one of them seemed to originate from the edge of the universe. That far we know. But we don't know what the source is. And there are thousands of them every day across the entire sky. And we don't know where they come from. Perhaps these fast radio bursts are an example of such a civilization. So that was the suggestion that we made.
And this is astounding. Usually when you hear things like this, speculations like this, it's not coming from Harvard professors. Isn't this a little risky for you to put out there, or?
Yes, well, it is risky in the sense that it's probably most likely to be. I mean, the origin of fast radio bursts is most likely to be much more mundane. But I think we should keep it in mind. The reason I put it out is because even if fast radio bursts are not those flashes of light, there might be others, and people have to keep that in mind. Frankly, I believe that we are not special. I believe that if we find life here on Earth, it exists elsewhere, definitely primitive life, and quite likely intelligent life at the level of intelligence that we have, and perhaps even more. And so just out of modesty, I think we should be modest enough to admit that there might be technologies far more advanced than we have out there, and we should just look for possible signals from them.
Because I think one of the wonderful things about your work is the encouragement for everyone to think outside the box a little bit, just because that's where you can make the really big discoveries. And when we're talking about this idea of there being other civilizations out there, then we kind of create a potential spectrum of intelligence, and like surely human beings aren't an example of the height of intelligence in an infinite universe. Surely. Avi, I have to ask this, and I know that this is way out there, but I get to do that because I have a podcast. And because we're talking about this, something that is astounding to imagine, that there is a civilization sending out these incredible bursts of energy to propel their ships through space. But couldn't there be the potential for advanced civilizations to communicate with us in ways that don't match our current understanding of how we communicate with each other? And this is something, are you familiar with Terence McKenna?
No, I'm not, but I completely understand your question, and I agree with it. Go ahead.
So the question, in other words, you say, okay, cosmic rays, they can affect our evolution. And if we're talking about a civilization that is so advanced it can propel a massive ship using some, God knows where it's getting the energy from, then couldn't it equally be possible that an advanced civilization could in some way or another influence cosmic rays to produce the biological life, that it could send out pulses of DNA influencing rays that could actually sort of grow life from potentially habitable planets? Or is that crazy?
No, this is a very interesting question. There are ways to not only affect the biology on a planet, but also in principle terraform a planet. A planet that was not habitable could become habitable if you work on it, if you do some engineering. And that could be done in the form of introducing an atmosphere to a planet that didn't have an atmosphere, or illuminating it, or directing starlight on it with big lenses, or all kinds of possibilities. There is a way of affecting the evolution, obviously, of life on a planet from a distance. It's also possible that they don't care about us, about the creatures like like we are, because we are so primitive that it's just like you walk down the street and there are ants on the pavement,
yes.
and you don't really care about them. You step on them and you move forward. And,
well, you know,
so
I try not to step on the ants. But also, you know, when we're talking about earlier you were saying we have to use what we know as humans to understand what's out there, as above, so below, right? And
right.
If we're talking about a super intelligence out there, you know, one thing that I think about is if we were together and on Skype and I somehow pulled a puppy dog out of my pocket and put it on the table, we would both start playing with the puppy dog. That's something we would do. You know, you would tease it a little. That's fun to do. Pet it. Well, and this is an example of a hierarchy of intelligence, you know, because on one end of this temporary spectrum of intelligence, we have you, then much further down is me. And then there's the puppy dog, right? And
I wouldn't say I would say that.
I would. And so I sometimes when I am speculating about a super intelligence, and maybe this is naive, I like to think of it as more than just like, look at those little ants. No need to interact with them. I would think that if we were intelligent enough, then when we looked at an ant, it wouldn't just be an ant anymore. We would understand.
Yeah, it's quite possible. It's quite possible that they're looking at us. They have not interfered in any of our affairs over the past thousands of years. But
right. I'm sorry to cut you off. May I cut you off? I'm sorry. Just right there. May I stop you just right there? The assumption is they haven't interfered with our affairs, and a lot of us think actually they have been involved with us, but the way that they've been involved with us is in, God, I'm sorry to say this. Please forgive me. You are a Harvard professor. Please forgive me. But a lot of us think they've been communicating to us through psychedelics, and that psilocybin, mushrooms, acacia in the case of Moses, you know, the dimethyltryptamine, these states of consciousness, they produce what's interesting about them is people who go into these states experience similar things. And the thing.
Okay, well, you see, I'm a scientist. It's not so much. It has nothing to do with the title that I have at Harvard, but the way I treat evidence is. I want evidence to be reproducible,
yes,
and scientific in the sense that independent people will agree on the evidence.
But so this is what's interesting.
If you can produce such evidence from any experience, doesn't matter, that is reproducible and that many people will agree provides solid proof, then that would be fine. But so far, we haven't seen such a thing.
Doctor, come to New York and I will produce evidence.